This podcast is brought to you by Blossoms PPC, your trusted partner for promotional apparel and uniforms. Since 1998, we've been manufacturing high-quality t-shirts, caps, and bags in bulk with competitive pricing and timely delivery. Visit www.blossomspc.com for more details.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the Backbenchers podcast. Today we have with us Mr. Romil Turakhia. Before the podcast, I was wondering, how do I even introduce sir? And I'm going to simplify it to one thing. We have a serial technologist who's going to explain to two BBA kids what the hell technology is. So, sir, my first question to you is, were you a backbencher in school and college? Because usually for me, an engineer is behind the teacher itself. So what were you like?
Yeah, not a backbencher, unfortunately. It doesn't go with the title of your podcast, but a middle bencher, so to speak. And kind of a smart strategy if anyone wants to do this, because backbenchers are always in focus. The teachers always look behind and say, those are the misit-mongers. And the ones in front are always the sneaker pots, and they have to finish all their homework and all of that. So middle benchers, the middle guys get away with murder, actually. So that's what I was, a middle bencher.
So where did you study? I mean, where did you do your schooling from?
Bishop Cotton Boys School.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
I feel coming on a Joseph's podcast.
Oh, lovely. Actually, see, look, all of this is just all good fun, good cheer, in good spirit. The rivalry has just kept both schools alive in so many ways. And if that wasn't there, I feel that there was something missing, actually, in each of the schools. So that is the rivalry is very much part of it. So we'd all miss it if it wasn't there. So we keep it alive. But it's obviously sad to know that later it's got to, of late, I remember a few years ago, the fights on the streets and so on shouldn't have been violent. But the older boys still keep the spirit going.
So what about college?
College was BMS College of Engineering here in Bangalore.
So coming to the main part of the podcast now. So when did you know that you were going to be an entrepreneur?
I at least always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, because that's just the kind of upbringing, the family that we have. We're from a business family. So there's no other option but to be an entrepreneur. You'd say, we're Gujaratis, so we'd say, if someone is working for someone, if there's a job, then I'd say, he's service mache, means he's in service of someone. He's not on his own, he's in service. So, I'm not putting down people. There are great folks in that, but our families, the background was that you had to do that. So you always knew you'd be, we didn't know it was called an entrepreneur back then, first of all. Entrepreneur is a nice, cool, sexy term now. It was just, you'll own a business. So you'll start a business or you'll work for someone. And there were just those two options. Of course, now startup and entrepreneur become sexy as a term. But yeah, we always knew, like even in school, for example, I remember, some of my classmates will listen to this and come after me now. But back then I wasn't good at marbles. I don't know if you all know, there's marbles. We played marbles. So there's glass, those spheres. And with those marbles, there were some players in my class who were really good, and I was no good at it. And I didn't have too much capital to buy marbles, but once I bought 6 marbles, and all the good marble guys didn't have money to buy marbles. So you'd lend 3 marbles to them and say, play, give me back the 3, and whatever you win, we'll split half and half. And so when you lose, we'll just take it over for the next day and we'll take those marbles back. So I sort of did that, and at the end of the year, I had some like 150 marbles or something when we started with 3. So obviously you know that that's where you're going to go.
So you were in financial services before you realized it.
Yeah, before I realized it. And so it is with all of business, right? You don't even know you're going to be in business. It's like this example. So, for example, a fish is in water and it knows most about water. It knows where the currents are, what temperature, where it'll find food, and all of it. But it doesn't know that it's H2O. So it may not be codified as business or management practices, or this is HR and this is sales and this is marketing or this is financing. But being a fish, you know that this is what water is. And later on, maybe you'll come to know it's H2O.
So with any project, like for example, whatever I'm taking up, usually I would research about it. I'd see how to go about it and everything. But over all our podcast, I've kind of realized one thing. There is no roadmap to a successful business. Even though you might think there is, we all try to achieve that as we're going towards a successful business. But one instant just throws all that out the window, and then suddenly you're on a different path.
That's true.
Or you're on a better path. So did you feel that to be the case when you were starting out?
Yes, absolutely. So, but however, we shouldn't throw caution to the winds. I think you should research your business, be passionate about it, know that it'll work. There's no point in saying, I'll go to somewhere near the coal mines and say I'll sell coal. It won't work. People won't buy it. That's all. So, you obviously need to do that diligence, but don't over diligence it. There has to be some research, but then quite a lot of gut feel, and don't do sort of what they call paralysis by analysis. You just make sure that you back your gut and start. And there is something called, another Romil somewhere could have done the exact same thing at the same time, probably in the same place, not even somewhere. And we both would have met with different results. So that's like you said just now, something can go right and you'll go up a trajectory, and something can go wrong and you'll go down a trajectory. It's happened to us. I mean, this last exit was my third exit. The first one went very well. The second one plummeted. We didn't do well at all. So, but then you learn from it, and I realized there are some things that you do learn, and you have to make sure of before you start your business. You have to make sure you know what exactly you're doing. We were just in the second one, we were fascinated by the idea of business rather than what business. And then the other thing that we did wrong was we spent more before we got money. The third thing that we did wrong was there are quite a few things, but so there are a few things that you should use as broad parameters or frameworks, but otherwise, yeah, you've got to move in quick and keep pivoting, as they say nowadays. Back then, it was just keep changing to wherever you get success. And our last company was an example of that. We started off as a generic company, but somewhere in 2010 we said we'll do only insurance and banking. 2012 actually, and then we did only insurance and banking. Soon we said we'll do only insurance. Then we said we'll do only life insurance, and we changed our markets. We kept, we got success in South Africa, so we started going to South Africa. Otherwise, we were an Asia-based company. So there is you obviously go with the ebbs and flows of business and try to catch the waves.
So every business that you've started, you've always done that with co-founders, correct?
Yes.
What is your framework to identify the right co-founders?
Oh, wow.
So before that, can we get a timeline or at least what the three businesses were for our audience to understand?
Sure. The first one was just a bespoke development business, which did bespoke software for anyone and everyone. And that soon became, that was just my and one more co-founder's business. And then we got absorbed by the other company that I started with three others. And that was not a software development company. It was a business consulting kind of company. But it needed a software development arm after a few years. And we said, who best to acquire than this company, which was already there. So that was on. But the one in between, which was somewhere in 1999 to 2001, that was an brand new company with another co-founder who was a Josephite and Catonian actually after that. But so we started that somewhere and wound it down in 2001. So yeah, there's those are the timelines. However, coming back to your question, identifying co-founders, we in all instances we found our co-founders before we found what we were going to do. So we didn't find co-founders based on in our case, nowadays most startups find co-founders based on skills. I want to do a healthcare startup. I know technology. I need to look for a healthcare professional, right? And then we both will get together, and that's how we'll win. And then I need to look for a finance person, a salesperson, something like that. But in our case, it just so happened in all cases that we had complementary skills. But what really worked for us is working hard at alignment before we got together. So, for example, what was automated workflow, which became Candela Labs later. In automated workflow, the four of us locked ourselves in a room over a session of 3 days, searching within ourselves why we are doing what we are doing. It's of course now become famous with Simon Sinek. Why do you want to do what you do? But back then we didn't ask the same question with the same phraseology, but we examined the intent behind the business, behind going into business for each of us. And once that matched, we actually then started the business. So there was a brief idea of what business we'd start. It would be tech, it would be in workflow automation, what was back then known as workflow automation, today known as intelligent automation. But we knew that broadly, but we didn't know, all of us, whether we'll come together or what will happen. We liked each other as people first, and we knew we'd build on each other's strengths. So that's important.
So were you friends? Were you like really good friends with your co-founders before you started the business, or did you guys like become closer friends and become better friends along the journey?
In two instances, so let's leave the other two. They were short run kind of ones. There they were friends first and then become co-founders. But in the last one, which was the longest stint that we had for 25 years, there we weren't friends before.
Okay.
In fact, they were all about 15 odd years senior to me.
Okay.
So how I met the first person was when I, in our college, in BMS college, we had a course called Information Sciences and Technology. That was new. That was brand new, and no companies would know of it. And back then there were ads in papers which says only these people need apply. Only civil engineers need apply. There'll be job postings, and they would say only computer science folks need apply. And so we would be locked out of most of our jobs, is what we realized. So in the third year, we started doing some recruitment kind of stuff, where back then it was not known as campus recruitment. There was nothing, but now we know that it's called campus recruitment. So we went out, did an outreach to companies to call them over to campus to recruit folks from our batch. For that, I had to do a dry run and rehearsal with someone. So a friend, a classmate of mine, he knew this person. And so we did our dry run. That person was in the industry and 15 years senior to us. And he and I kept in touch. And so when he came across an idea, he called me. And then we said, yeah, let's explore this together. Then he had his fiercest rival in his business. And he said, while he was my fiercest rival, I respect how he was. So I'm going to catch that guy and see if he can join us. And he said, look, I'm partners with someone and I can't come without that person. That to us was obviously integrity. That's nice. So he said, either both of us come in or none of us come in. So then we got together and locked ourselves in a room and checked if we match as people.
So, can I ask you exactly how you go about assessing passion? For example, if the three of us want to build a company and you say you're passionate about technology, you want to solve something for someone. Adnan might be passionate about technology in the sense that he just wants to make a living out of it. I might be passionate because it's interesting, but I don't have a particular passion towards insurance, towards healthcare. Again, for me, I just want to make a living out of it. How do you know that these passions align? And how do you know someone even has the correct ideology?
Passions align amongst co-founders, or passion? First of all, discover your passion and know it's your passion. What's your question?
Both. Because sometimes people might just view their desire to make money as a passion in that field. It might not necessarily be a passion, right?
So then we'll get to that first, and then we'll see about alignment with other founders. But to know whether something is your passion, I'd like to tell your students that it's important to recognize it as. So, for example, an Olympics athlete, this is what comes to my mind. For him or her to be passionate about winning the medal, they not only have to practice in these kind of hard whatever hours, but they recognize as their passion if they can almost, when they close their eyes, they can hear the stadium, they can smell the smells, they can they can feel the medal. That's if it becomes that real for them, that's when they know it's passion. Until they can see it that close and that real, even if it's 5, 10, 15 years away, most Olympic athletes at least train for 10, 15 years before they even appear on stage in the Olympics, leave alone win a medal. But the point is that they're passionate about it. They know that I'll be able to last 15 years because those sounds, that noise, the flag of my country going up, whatever that pride may be, it's worth it for me. So when you find that happening, then you know that's your passion.
So it's
of course, that'll keep changing.
It's a lot more subjective then.
Yeah, it's all with you. It's all with you. It's inside you. You've got to really look within yourself. But once you do that, you may want a 15-year journey and then a medal at the end of it. There might be someone else who wants a 2-year journey and exit the company. And so then that straight away doesn't align. So there are quite a few questions you should go through in terms of questionnaire. It's almost like none of your folks would have gone through marriage as well, so you don't know. But when you're looking for a partner, a life partner, is the same thing as when you're looking for your co-founder. You're in fact going to spend more time with your co-founders than with your life partner for a long period of time. So, so you should be careful, ask all the right questions. What if that person wants to be there? I know in one of mine, in the earliest ones, we both had aligned to the fact that I'll be here for 2 years while he does his masters, then he comes back, I'll go do my masters and so on. But then that never happened because the alignment wasn't there, then he remained there. So, there are things where personal aspirations don't align with what the situation demands. And maybe then either the situation has to change and you may not align with it, or you both look for different situations. But that's really what is important, alignment.
So what got you into tech? Because again, you mentioned in the beginning that you're from a Guju, business family. Did you always know that you're going to get into tech? And was your family business
No.
What was your family business? Huh?
It was ready-made garments. It was software, and
I
we
wouldn't
went to
have
software.
guessed.
Yeah.
So then
Forgive the bad pun, but software to software.
What got you into tech then? What?
I think from 8th standard, when we had computer science in class, it was it was fascinating. It was fascinating to see that there's logic in everything. There were games where they'd say, okay, bobble up this number. At the cost of sounding nerdy, but the fact that some of those puzzles that write a program, it used to be always write a program to do this and write a program to do that. And writing the algorithms for that was quite fascinating for me. And reaching, a definite answer of yes, I've passed or I've failed right at the end of that is good, because most other things you don't know. Like if you're in a sale, you'll know, yeah, you got the money or you didn't. But other than that, in most other things, let's say in HR or whatever, you'd say, did I do a good job mentoring someone or didn't I? And you won't ever know because there's so many other factors that come into being. But here, everything is in your control in tech and you can do whatever you have to do. It kind of felt nice. So there'd be times when we'd be in school till 10, 11 in the night, working for some project, some science exhibition that's coming up, something or the other. It would be fun. So I said, hey, what fun it would be if I had to do this for life.
So do you like quantifying as many aspects in your life as you can?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just know, based on what you were saying, I would ask you that.
Yeah, I do like quantification. I like precision. But that's about me. Your audience will get bored.
So,
but yeah, there are some people like that.
Now, because you said that, I'm going to assume that a lot of the things you do are, again, whatever you've done in life has been calculated, and you've been able to make very clear-cut decisions, and there's not a lot of guesswork involved.
No, I like to quantify stuff, but there has to be what I call a decision-making framework. I create a DMF for everything.
Can you elaborate?
So what's my decision-making framework? For example, if I were to, let's say this podcast, should I accept the podcast or not? Now, it's very simple for me to just say yes because, I knew you folks and I'd like to help out students and just go with that. That's one way of doing it. The other is to say, so then my decision-making framework is all about helping people, emotions. So am I doing enough for it and so on. But another decision-making framework could be if I was like a cutthroat professional who was worried about any, how would I say, precedents coming on the internet and so on, then I'd say, who else has come on their podcast? Am I going to shine or not? Will this podcast be, if I come here, will I be considered? So that would be a separate set of decision making framework based on what you think. So it does start with what you intuitively want to do, and then you make a DMF around it, and then you make your decision. So anything actually can be put into sort of a decision making framework.
So speaking of frameworks, what was your frame? I mean, what has been your framework all along to identify and evaluate new opportunities, like business opportunities, to be more specific?
Again, so it starts with the gut first, and then the decision making framework comes.
Okay.
So the gut with my co-founder, I must give him credit. He said, let's do automation. And he had different reasons for it. He was working with IBM. He had seen that there were this software was sold, but no one knew how to implement workflow automation and so on. But for us all, in that 3 days, sort of hide away, get away kind of thing, we all realized we want to transform the way people work. So that was a gut feel. Did we have quantification then? How many people in this world want to transform the way people work? Is it a $1 billion market or $1 trillion market? We didn't do any of that. It didn't come as our first decision-making framework. It was more about alignment and automation, and we'd love to do it. And are there enough people who want to do it? Yeah, by and large, I can understand that there are. Then the quantification and decision-making framework came in. Which country should we go to? And one may say US and one may say Singapore. And then where do you want to go? Start your first branch, right? So in that, then you start applying decision-making frameworks. And of course, visit those places and then first get your gut feel and then put your frameworks. But I would say frameworks always follow gut feel.
So what is your opinion? I mean, like there's this term, I mean, like I've listened to a few podcasts on like starting off a business, and like there's always this talk about making as many mistakes as you can when you're small.
Yes.
But don't you think that like if you make too many mistakes when you're small, you could reach a point that, your rocket just blasting before it even takes off?
That's true. I mean, make as many mistakes as in not those that can blow you out of the water. I mean, they can blow you out or off. Rather, you obviously have to size the mistakes. But I think the right time to make mistakes is then, because after that, you've got too much to lose. So, for example, after you got the 3 of the largest clients in Singapore, you can't make your mistake in the 4th one because the other 3 will just, But in your very first one, which was a smaller one, you take 2 or 3 smaller clients, and then maybe you do a good job, but you learn how they think, how you think. Maybe you'll take the hit for it. You'll say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to charge you anymore, but let us make good for it or whatever. It's so much easier for you to do that when you are small, and very little face to lose, very little reputation to keep in that sense, right? So obviously you do that, but you don't say, let me take a $1 billion order now and I don't even know how to do this, and I won't even have advance, but I need to put in the money and then I'll supply and then we'll see. That's again kind of stupid. So obviously you have to size the mistakes, but the sooner you make them, the better. But you'll make them all through, you know what?
Speaking about mistakes, for example, you gave us that the first company you did, you had a quite successful exit. The second one you wouldn't claim so. So why do you think that difference comes? For example, here we have a successful man. He's done probably everything right. So then what change comes where you feel like, well, I did everything correctly, but now it didn't work out this time?
No, I don't think we did everything correctly.
The first time itself.
The second time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, lots of lessons to learn, more so having a vision, having a product, whether you want services or not. So I think all those are important. I said that earlier in the podcast.
Yes, sir.
So I wouldn't want to diss that so much because we made those mistakes and therefore applied them so thoroughly in the third, right? So obviously none of them are mistakes. They're just, don't want to be cliched, but truly it is a stepping stone to success. So they were all stepping stones to success. And we, in fact, then in our company, in Candela Labs, we used to have something called the Smart Failure Award.
Okay.
We had awards for people who tried something and failed smartly. So every week on Fridays, we'd have the TGIF, and every 4th TGIF, we'd have like a Smart Failure Award, where we'd give away awards. There's people would come and say, I tried this and I failed. I tried, trying to pass visiting cards. Nobody uses cards nowadays. But then how do you still pass visiting cards to each other? Contact info, yeah, QR code and all came in now. But back then they were trying to do it through sound. And I thought that was a fascinating idea. And they worked so hard at it for about 6 months. And somehow it didn't fail because it didn't work. It failed because there's some distance and line of sight and whatever problems. But I thought that was smart. That's an example of a smart failure. And we'd give smart failure awards to those people. So they say, hey, it's okay to fail. Let me do something else again. I do think that it's important to fail.
So, what are some mistakes you think young founders make? Like first-time founders, right off college, or maybe in their, like when they're 23, 24. What are some mistakes that you see a lot of them make?
I've seen a few, and it doesn't have to be the young ones. In fact, even the old ones make the same mistakes. The mistakes at the startup level are, first of all, is founder alignment. Most of you should seek co-founders. You should probably not seek to do everything on your own. If you are that kind of person who's a type A and I'll be the only one standing and so on, maybe that's for you. But usually you have your co-founders. In family business cases, it'll be brothers. It'll be someone or the other. But so co-founder fit is an important aspect and spend a lot of time on it. Second, make sure you both talk about the hard stuff. What happens? I've had so many companies come to me and one founder thinks he's a co-founder and co-shareholder, whereas the other guy thinks, oh, you're just an employee with us. You're a founding employee, but that doesn't mean you're like an equal founder. And they haven't had those kind of conversations, difficult conversations, because the idea is so exciting. It's exciting to, ideate that way and mentally, get challenged and so on. It's challenging to do all of these things. It's nice. These are good things to do. So you're all drawn into that and trying to make it succeed, and you're hustling and so on. Why talk about all this stuff? But it's important to talk about that. Then what happens if someone drops out 2 years later? It's a 4-year journey, 5-year journey, 10-year journey for it to become a good, sustainable company. If someone drops out before that, what happens? How do you get paid? Do you get paid equal? Do you get paid based? And let's say if they were unequal founders, let's say someone was already in the industry for 6 years and this one was new, then what happens? Are the salaries based on seniority? Are they based on roles? Then who leads the company? If there are two co-founders, if both have the same opinions, then who wins later? We'll all argue it out and merit will always win. But if merits are on both sides, then what happens? Someone has to take a call and say, this is what we'll do. So there is a lot of that which people make mistakes on. So that's all on the founder and the framework side. The next bit is, I've seen people have either rush in too quickly into an idea, or take too much time in analyzing an idea, and they never start off. So they won't start off for 2-3 years. They have anxiety to kind of launch, fear to launch. Or the other way around is they just say, okay, let's start something, then we'll see. That was my second startup, where we said we'll play it by ear and we'll get something. We'll get somewhere. We tried a few things, but they didn't work. But the point is that get a good idea of where you're heading before you start. Third, in the new fangled way of things, people are focusing on funding way too much, how to get funding and how to get your first few investors and so on. The first few could be family and friends, and do focus on that, but don't focus on getting VC money very, very quickly, because it drains you out, and then half of your life you'll be doing only that, and your business will have only the other half, whereas your business should have 1.5 of your life actually. So those are some of the mistakes. Team members hire expenses, only have them, like, postpone all expenses till whenever you can. Do everything yourself, hustle. And quite often try to get your clients to pay for your cash flows if you can. So I come from a set of businesses, so there will be other founders who you'll interview. and who may give you the exact opposite view, which is you don't need to be in a business that makes money. But from our upbringing and wherever we come from, we're conservative businessmen. Every business has to make money, every deal has to make money. So it's important to have that in mind. And nowadays, unless you're like an algorithm company and you're developing something which will take 5 years to become big, unless you're doing something like that, which is rare, all the others should start making making money right off the bat.
So, sir, you had a comfortable family business in apparel. What made you go towards tech and not continue your family business?
So the journey was quite interesting. From 8th standard, you have to work in your business. You don't have holidays or weekends. Why would you have those, right? So you'd go to the shop and work there, especially unless you're going for a family holiday. So business was always there. It's always a backup. It's comfortable. But one or two questions that came to my mind: if I join the business, will I be able to grow it multifold, or is it better overall for us as a family for me to break off and do something else? And maybe that'll grow. It's so much easier to grow something which is only one into multifold. If it's already 10, then to make it multifold is difficult. So that was one. And I knew I had my cousins and the family who would be able to do that on their own. I would not add much value there. So I thought I'd do this. And second was, of course, tech was a passion, and tech couldn't have been used in the business I had other than consuming tech. So I did want to do that. And the third was so my dad, of course, everyone said, do whatever you want, doesn't matter. But I asked my elder uncle, my father's elder brother, I said, but if I started off with a job, and then I did, what is now known as moonlighting. I started a company in parallel and so on, and worked there in the nights. But the more important thing was, I did say, what if I go and do a job? How will it be? What will people think? Because you're not supposed to do a job if you're coming from a business family, that kind of background. So he said, well, think about this. You can come and sit in the shop as well. So you'll be a guy who's doing business and a job. Nobody would done that. So do it. So that's really how I started. So there was a lot of encouragement from the family. And there was never a spot. Touch wood, thanks to everything that I've been blessed with. There was never a place where I'd have to suffer if my other business lost. I'd always have food, clothing, shelter.
Don't you think that that is one of the ideal mentalities that your family can impose on you? For example,
Wait, finish your question. I have a follow up with that.
sure. For example, you can still be a very entrepreneurial person at your job, and you are likely to do your job better than someone else because you're thinking from a more macro perspective.
Yes. You can be entrepreneurial to your job. Jobs, and especially nowadays, jobs are not like what they used to be 30 years ago, 25 years ago. At that time, you were supposed to do people's bidding. Right now, you're supposed to come up with what you want to do, even if you're in a job. So I think the demands of today's jobs, especially for your audience, are very different. They, by nature, have to be entrepreneurial. The only difference, therefore, by nature, you have to be not entrepreneurial, enterprising. In a job, you have to be as enterprising as if you started your business. So I think both of them give you the equal, same amount of excitement. There's that much challenge, but you risk far lesser when you're in a job. You don't lose your pants, so to speak. But in the other one, you could lose your pants. So depending on that risk, the reward is also that kind, right? So in a job, you get your whatever 8 to 12% increment year on year. And you know exactly, if you draw the graph, even if you left a few companies and joined others at, a jump of 20%, you know that 3 jumps in 20 years and 8% increment. If my salary is this now, it will be this at that time. And you kind of know you'll be off by a few, percentage points, but not much. Whereas in business, you can design your own trajectory almost. Of course, things may not go the way you want it, but so both have their pros and cons. But yeah, you need to be enterprising in both. I think today's job market is very different from when I was there.
So your journey has basically been from a store to a boardroom. Like, what Gujju family, I mean, what Gujju business values do you think have helped you in tech?
Oh, everything.
Importance of cash.
Cash profitability,
Yeah.
but I want certain answers.
Everything, importance of cash, but starting from sales. So, I didn't know that I'd use all my shopkeeper skills in business. But let's say we are selling clothes, right? Ready-made garments and jeans, shirts, and whatnot. When someone comes in, you are kind of automatically gauging whether the first thing you gauge is whether that person is going to buy or not buy. Are they a just looking customer or are they actually going to buy? And you realize that in enterprise software sales, which I was in, you also make the same judgment. You qualify quickly enough whether they're going to buy or not. So, how do you get those skills? How do you understand whether he's going to buy or not? Based on a few keywords they use, how they speak. There's something to it. So, you learn that in the shop. The second thing you learn, so that's, I'm going to talk about sales, then I'll talk about finance. Every area actually you learn all of it. But in fact, Harvard wrote something about, there was, I think it was Harvard. There was a study where they said that business should be learned from a shopkeeper, a small shopkeeper. Or most fundamentals of business should be learned from a shopkeeper. But anyway, next thing is when two people come in, let's say husband wife, while the husband's trying on the shirt, and you really have to find out who the real buyer is. The user might be someone, but the buyer might be, if the wife says something like this and he does, even though he's looking really good in it and he says, no, I don't want it, for who you have to order the cool drink in the shop, right? So you learn that. And that you apply even in your enterprise software sales. You understand who the real buyer is versus the user. That distinction came in, naturally to us. But for some sales folks, this was formal sales training that I would do. Then there is also those, if you come with a few friends as well, and your girlfriend, let's say you come, and she's the real buyer behind your whatever you want, and your friends are also there who'll say, they can't say yes, but they can say no. You'll follow their no's, but if they say yes, you still need a yes from your girlfriend. So that that there are people who can say no but can't say yes. So how do you manage those? So that's there. How do you deal with advances? Then of course daily bookkeeping becomes natural. So my co-director used to say, he was from Parley, my co-founder, and he would say, the one thing I want to know is सुबह कितना पैसा गया और शाम को कितना वापस आया. I need to understand that what came in is more than what went out. So those kind of fundamentals, the differences between profit and loss versus cash flow, the difference between an asset versus an advance, which is a liability which you have to pay back, those become innate. So that comes from a business background. But it's not that it can't be taught. I'm sure at this very institute, at St. Joseph's Institute of Management, you guys are being taught exactly that. So you don't have to do the hard bits. You already have that on a platter. Pay attention.
So this might not be exactly for our audience, but for a broader audience, India has a lot of engineers, right? For sure there is. Yet there is also so much demand for engineers that doesn't get satisfied by the current supply that we have. What makes a good engineer, or what makes someone write a better software than someone else, like, two IIT kids or an IIT and a non-IIT guy?
So in our industry, I would in our company, I would always say, you can be a software developer. We'd have so many software developers, but to have software engineers is a very different thing. So a software developer can write just normal programs which will interface with the database, throw out data, and whatever stuff. But a software engineer writes the algorithms that drive efficiency or optimization or whatever, right? So your question was, what does it take to be a good engineer, or what was the question now, having made this?
For me, it was more that what does it take to be a good engineer? There's such a good...
And the demand supply thing was your question. Yeah. So that's when I bring this distinction, you have to now understand where the demand is. Worldwide, the demand is merely quite a bit for software developers, because there's not that much earth-shattering software being developed every time. I think Mr. Narayan Murthy called us, or someone in that somewhere either Mr. Narayan Murthy or someone that famous and who's made it that big, called us software coolies. We only did, we didn't do the thinking behind the engineering and so on in India, especially. We have a supply of software developers, but we do not have as many software engineers who remain in India. Most of our software engineers have gone away, probably to the valley. So if you see most of the big, nice startups there, which are Indian owned, those are the folks that are software engineers, really. Like Perplexity takes a software engineer to make, not a software developer.
Uh, so what are like new emerging technologies that young like students who want to start a business can actually leverage?
Students who want to start a
Like
business.
final years, like let's say like I'm graduating now. What are some technologies that I could use to actually that I could leverage to create a business around?
Oh, it's amazing. Today, you can start a business in so little. Yesterday's $500,000 is today's $50,000. All it takes is $50,000 to start a business. What it would take 500,000 earlier. Sorry, I keep doing this. Um, so, um, your websites, your marketing, your social marketing is so much easier today. It depends. First of all, you have to decide whether you're B2B kind of business or B2C kind of business, and then based on that, you leverage some technology. If
In
you're
the B2B space.
so in the B2B space, there's a different set of technologies that you should use, but don't have over reliance on technologies. It's very important to also use your gut and human feel, especially in the beginning part of your. I mean, you're in the part of your business where you're still forming a thesis of what your business will do. And so use technology enough to research your markets, to research competitors, which is so much easier now. I mean, remember, we grew up in the days which are pre-Google. I don't think you can even imagine that if we would do research not having Google. There was research possible, but you guys have all of that, right? So you have a ton load of stuff, and your workflows have now changed. I mean, even the search generation is going away, and the AI toolkit generation is coming up. So you actually ask your AI questions before you do this. So your workflow has changed. So today you have far more tools at your disposal and for free than we ever had before. But yeah, depending on B2B or B2C, choose your technology. But second, don't overtech yourself at this point. Focus on your thesis and making sure your thesis works in the world, and you can sell more of it and so on. And whatever research and tech aids the thesis formation, use that. And then once the thesis is well formed, then of course, if it's a I know only tech and software businesses, if it's a software development business, just ask yourself the question: do I need software developers right now, or can I use existing software, open source software, or can I have AI write my software for me? So I have just one or two engineers with me who use AI as developers, or do I actually have developers? So they're two very different things.
I actually never knew that before this podcast. I'd have said
Same,
software engineer and developer is the same thing. That
Engineers know algorithms and stuff. I mean, developers will know yeah, when you get in the industry, you can tell.
So what is your personal view on AI?
For the first time, it's not hype. There have been several AI. I mean, we had AI in 1991 when I did my
Okay.
engineering. We had AI as a subject
Okay.
in BMS, in this information science and technology. But there have been AI winters, and then again, it's come alive, and there's an AI winter, and it's come alive. But for this time, truly availability of AI uh, to the common person and also to the software developers. Um, Again, not engineers may not need it as much, but even engineers use it a lot. But is democratized. I mean, you can get tokens for like 2 cents. You can get 1 million tokens for 2 cents or 10,000 tokens or whatever. I mean, humongous number of tokens for very little money. So it is real, and it is becoming far more intelligent, dangerously so. But I remain excited. I'm not in. There are two large camps forming, right? There's the doom and gloom camp, and then there's the excitement kind of camp. I remain excited.
so I have a follow-up question to that. Do you think this level of AI technology was there even a couple of years back? It's just that final 20% of the UX and public understanding that bridged the gap? Or do you think it was that rapid that, post COVID and now suddenly we have AIs like ChatGPT?
I'm sure the algorithms and so on, the GPT, for example, the white paper that was written, which was the basis of generative programming techniques, the GPTs were the white paper was there quite a long while ago. Obviously, people have worked in their own ways to train stuff and so on, but I do think that in November 2022, was it, when or December 2022, when Chat GPT hit it, right? That's when it really became real. There's a lot of research going on in non-applicable formats, non-democratizable formats. There was always machine learning before that. Before that, there was stuff which today is called AI, which was anyway already there, which was predictive analytics, right? So it's been stages, and it's there's been a build up. There's no sudden. I don't think there's a sudden explosion. The sudden explosion was just the democratization of it.
My next question would be, for example, people who are currently building a business that is based around existing AI. So they're using, AIs to solve a problem. Do you think that in about 5 years' time, their client would just end up using those AIs on their own, and it does not make sense for a business to leverage that?
So think of at least the current state of AI, and probably for a long time. Think of AI as the um, electric saw that came. You've seen carpenters
Yes,
at
sir.
home. I don't know if you're old enough to have seen carpenters who came with hand saws. So they came with hand saws at home and made your table. And then there was the electric saw. That then quite a bit of the population of the world started becoming self-trained carpenters because it was easy. But there were quite a few who said, even if there's this, I'd still want someone else to make it. But then I need a carpenter who knows how to use a
Electric saw.
electric saw rather than a hand saw. So that's really what I think will happen.
So, for example, someone who's using AI software to, simplify HR programs, there will be in the next 10 years those who just end up using that software on their own and those who still just outsource that function of their business, even though it is to people who are using AI to solve that problem.
Yeah, so there will be usage of AI by folks so there will be a mix. It'll start becoming a mix.
So, and to follow up with that, like I remember hearing this quote once: in the future, there's only going to be two kinds of businesses, tech businesses and tech enabled businesses. So, again, like Arham and I, a big part of our audience comes from like a non tech background. What are some platforms do you think that like that we could use to learn and keep up to pace with like this big change that's going on in the tech world?
See, you guys should. So you already did that before the podcast. You pre-trained your models. You said this is what the podcast is about, and here's this gentleman coming, Romil Turakhia, here's his LinkedIn, and give me some set of questions. That's a brilliant use of. Otherwise, you know what? I'd spend 2 days on just prepping for a podcast before, what questions to put in and what not. Those 2 days are saved, right? Similarly, for legal agreements, there's so much templatization that used to also already be there, but now with AI, you can get it so customized to your needs that few weeks become a few days. So I think for non-tech businesses, what tech to leverage would first of all be all the GPTs and all the documents and all the presentations and spreadsheeting and analytics of spreadsheeting once you become large enough. But um, other than that, as your business grows, the application layer will start coming in, where HR, could it be AI enabled, where instead of having an HR manual which is 500 pages, can someone just ask my own personal AI how much leave is left or something? So that's all agentic AI will come in place, and so you'll get more tools as your business grows. But in the beginning, that's why I said this is a big aha moment. This is real this time's AI because it's available to non-tech folks. It's democratized.
Do you think for someone who's not in software at all, for people like us, if I had the time, do you think it's still relevant for someone like us to learn a C programming or Python?
Python, yes.
Python, yes. Why is that?
Python, yes. So for a long time now, there's not going to be as much. So one is, first of all, it helps you think logically. That helps in all frames of life. I mean, my decision making framework came in only because I learned computer science from 8, 9, 10 standard. It didn't come in if I was in my shop, right? So clearly it helps you think in an orderly fashion. It helps you, if this, then this, if not this, then what. So it gives, and truth tables, those are pristine, that will still remain. So I think learning a programming language in itself just inculcates a way of thinking, which is important. In our company, I had asked a person who joined us is legal, then he moved over to HR, and he said, now I want to progress beyond this. And I said, just start learning logic and start just solving analytical problems. And so he would every night religiously solve analytical problems. And so inculcating that way of thinking is important. Which language you learn, not as important. Python is in fashion now, so you should do that, because you can give Python snippets and so on in between your AI workflow that you're building. How do I give you an example? So let's say an example is you had a website and you had said you had an idea and you're saying, look, we've not yet launched this speaker which can be stuck to a wall and no wires required. All those who are interested, click here. Now your normal routine would have been collect all those addresses and then write back to them, figure out, and then you want, let's say, companies that can distribute your speakers. You don't want them because you said B2B. Let's say you're looking for companies, and so you'll manually would have had to do quite a few things. Get that address, email ID, and then make sure that you do some research on the company to which that email ID belongs, and then see if they're big enough distributors for you or not, and so on, right? So you'll have to do all that work. Today, you can write an agentic AI workflow. You'll have to write one, and that's why your Python will be needed. Is because you'll say, all the emails that come in automatically, there's an agent which looks at that. This doesn't need to be AI. This is just an agent which looks up the company name from the email ID. Then about that company, it goes all over. That's where the AI comes in and searches everything and then puts it into a document for you. And then that document gives you the key salient points. So there's some summarization kind of thing. And then it also creates a draft in your outbox, in your drafts box, not outbox, and draft email of what to send back to that company based on that company's output. Okay. Now that's hyper customization. Now you could spend days doing that, or you could learn Python, just write a small piece of code in N8N, which is a platform, and you just say, hey, then so this is my workflow, and it'll do that automatically. And every day, the thousands of people who are coming on your website and clicking for interest, the next day you have 1,000 emails in your draft box already ready, which are customized to them already with research done on that company, the size of the company, or they operate only in Japan, but I have 3 from Japan. So what do I do? So I think it's important to learn Python.
So
till of course it democratizes and becomes more simple for even end users to start setting up these workflows. There will be platforms that come up in 2-3 years like that. There are some that come up even now. Have come up even now.
What's the best way that you think like Arham and I could learn Python? Like the best, most.
There are many Coursera courses. I mean, just start many Coursera, Udemy. There are quite a few. It's just hit it. Make the mistakes. Okay. The mistakes that we talked about. Make those mistakes.
And I think Python is one of the few programs that does not scare a new person as much as another program.
Yeah, probably not as much as Java, for example. But it'll still scare you once you get into doing complex stuff. At that time, turn back to your AI and say, I would like to do this. Give me a Python snippet. And then, but you need to know enough Python to put that snippet back into your code, right? So whenever it's complex, go to AI, get the snippet from AI, so like a co-pilot or something.
Do you have any stories of how frustrated you would get writing code? Because that's something I hear quite often, where someone would have written maybe 1,600 lines of code and there's one bug in somewhere there, they go back to it.
Mm, I haven't written code from 1996, so
Okay.
I wouldn't know. But I've heard stories of my engineers facing exactly this.
So speaking of that, again on the podcast that you did in 2024, the one that I listened to, you mentioned that yeah, you were part of like you were heading the tech team, the operations team, and then all of you decided to switch
Yeah.
roles, and you went into sales.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about that? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I get why you get. I totally understand why you went into sales. You're a phenomenal speaker. But
Thank you.
were you always like this actually since college, or did you learn this along the way?
Thank you. No, I love speaking, as you can see. We're boring your audience. Please play this at 1.5 or 2x speed. This is coming too late, so put a banner right through. But yeah, so I think sales was always a mystery. Everyone said it's an art, and when I joined from a tech background to that, again I couldn't see why it couldn't be science. So quite a bit of my work in the company was to convert sales into a science and a process and a procedure, and we actually managed to do that.
So can you elaborate on that? Because I remember you on the podcast mentioning that when you went into sales, you tried quantifying things,
Yes.
and there was a certain thing that I still remember where you said that a salesperson told you that I had a good meeting, and you asked him, okay, what defines a great meeting?
Yeah.
And then you involved a bunch of KPIs. Can you tell us a
Yeah,
bit
so
about
yeah, I mean, everything in sales was like that, right? Where did you go today? How many meetings you had today? Quantifiable. I had 3 meetings. Were they good? Yeah, one good and two good and one bad. For me, I didn't know how to react to it. So if I tell you that there are, there are 20 chairs in this room, you won't know how to react to it. Does that mean this is overcrowded, or does that mean it is empty?
that? Yes, sir.
It could be both. You don't know how to react to a statement unless you get everything around it, right? Oh, the hall was only like, a 5 by 5, then 20 chairs is too much. If the hall was 500 by 500 feet, then 20 chairs is too little. So you've got to quantify everything. You've got to have your processes. So when they said we had a good meeting, I'd say, how about next time we actually create objectives for the meeting, go in, and then you come out and tell me how many of those objectives were met, because that's the only way I understand it. It was my weakness. I'm a software guy. I need to, if I told you I wrote a good program, will you buy it? You won't.
No.
You'll say, what features does it have? What makes it good? So same way I'd ask a question of a sales guy, what makes the meeting good? So that's just one example, but that's another whole, like a 3-day sales training that I have on just um, metrics and sales and how to make it science. And at every stage, there are 6, 7 stages and so on. But suffice it to say that it can be about 70 or 80% sales is science. Sales can be science.
In like maybe 2 minutes, could you just like tell us about some of those metrics? You mentioned it's a 3-day thing. Probably in 2 minutes, could you
So
just
we've
explain it to
created,
us?
I learned from, I moved in from software to sales. So I reached out to all the good sales guys on LinkedIn that I knew. And I said, teach me. I don't know. And they liked me, so, or whatever. So many people gave me frameworks, but one person gave me a framework that led to a book by Keith Eads. So I want to give credit to all of them. But that had a framework called PPVVC, Pain, Power, Vision, Value, and Control. And we changed it to our own needs, of course. But, if you wanted just a 2-minute primer, pain is, what is the pain of the client? If there is no pain, you haven't had a good meeting. If you haven't unearthed the pain, because if there's no pain, there's no change. So what was that pain? Then power. Did you meet the right people in power? That goes to my shopkeeper example. If
Yes,
you
sir.
notice who's
The
buying,
wife.
the wife, and then those who can say and no but can't say yes. So the power bit, that we baked that in. Then there was pain, power, vision. uh, do you and the client share a common vision, and has he stolen your vision? That's the metric. If he then says, make a presentation which I will make to my board saying this is my idea, that's when you really won. Because if you say, so they would come and complain to me, he's stealing our idea, we told him that this is how he can solve this problem, now he's saying it's his. I said, mate, that's great, because now he's put his neck on the line, he will buy it, he's already bought into your vision. So having a common vision was, show me proof that there's common vision, only then you can move to the next stage. Then value, were you able to enunciate what value they will get? Value is not price, what value they'll buy it. What value will they get, and in how much time will they recover their money that they put in you? So value, and then control. Do you have control on the sales cycle overall? Have you put down your plan between now and getting a purchase order or sale down in a spreadsheet where the client has agreed to talk to you every evening to update you on what stuff he had to do to move the sale forward and what you had to do? So unless you have that level of control there, you probably will not see it closing as quickly as you want to. So those are just that's the 2 minute primer, but there's a lot going on within that.
So, do you have any more like this in other aspects of your business also?
Yeah, in most, they used to call me the acronym guy in the office, but there were quite a few. For recruitment, we would have AVA, adaptability, versatility, and adrenaline. We looked only for those three qualities in a person.
Is this available online, sir, by any chance?
No, we
We're
just
gonna
made
sit-
stuff
we're gonna
up.
have to sit with sir and make it
PPVC is available online. That was
Okay.
key things, but we just made stuff up. Yeah.
So, just give us a list of them. I'll listen to it. Like, this will be the business masterclass
Yeah,
on how to
100%,
quantify
100%.
Sure.
So,
I'm happy
any
to.
that come to you.
So anything that
That
comes to AVA came to my mind. There used to be for the Smart Failure Award was one more. There were quite a few, but it's been a while. I'll think of some.
So, based on this entire conversation that we've had, the only like entrepreneur from like the global stage that like I can think of when I've spoken to you is Jeff Bezos.
Oh my goodness.
No, the way I remember, like the thing is, like as a kid, I was like obsessed with Jeff Bezos, and like I remember reading the book Invent and Wander, which is again like a collection of his shareholder letters, and there he always again credits a lot of his thing to him working on his grandfather's ranch and like learning a lot of self-reliance. Then again, your take on
I must
innovation.
read that book. Just give me the title. I haven't read
Definitely, I think it's called Innovation and Wonder.
it. Uh-huh.
His takes on innovation and again like the Smart Failure Award, like taking big bold risks. And this part that we didn't touch on much, but that you touched on your previous podcast was the customer obsession part,
Yeah.
where again where you built the thing for the end consumer, not just for the insurance company.
Correct. Yeah. A customer obsession was important. Before every project there would be only one charter item which is make the customer say wow and his customer. So we then changed it to we had two stages of customers. One was our client and then their customer.
So, B
So
to
it's a
B to C and
yeah.
all the
So because we're building anything which only provides customer delight, and then our client will buy more from us if they're getting kudos from their customers. So it's a just make your client say wow. Till then, your project is not complete. You can contractually be complete, but unless they've said wow, don't come back.
So, I wanted to ask you, you quantify so much, right? So, for you, let's forget the results for a second. What were your ideal days like? What were your non-ideal days like? And what was the difference between them? It doesn't have to be that in an ideal day you landed a 100 crore contract. It's just that as a founder or as a business owner, you just did everything that had to be done for that day.
See, for different folks, it's different strokes. For me, I loved external meetings. So an ideal day would have at least a good mix of 2-3 client meetings. Then all the rest could be internal. But a non-ideal day would be all internal meetings, which is still needed and necessary. But I know there were other co-founders of mine who thrive on just internal meetings and setting things right internally because we needed to make sure everything worked well to present to the outside world. So there was that. So it depends on your definition of what is an ideal day, selfishly speaking. But an ideal day for any leader would have to include quite a bit of customer facing stuff or client facing. That's my view.
And another part of that would be, your goals, right? Because that's what defines your ideal days and your non-ideal days. Was there a framework where you had your macro goals and then your small steps to get to them?
Wish we had done it as well as we could. There was an OKR kind of framework, but we wouldn't have our eye on it every time on the engineering side and operations side. Then when my co-founder took over, I was lousy at it. When my co-founder took all those pieces, he put all of that together. And so he'd have weekly reviews and so on, and he had those metrics. But when I moved to sales, obviously there was quite a bit of, objective oriented action.
So that brings me on to one of my following questions, and was what I was trying to lead up from the start. Let's say you have two founders, you have your five, six functions of business. How does a founder divert his energy, and where should it go?
Again, look, hopefully there'll be 2, 3 founders. Okay. And depending on the roles that you have, about 70% should go into your role, but 30% should go in knowing the other roles. Because if I took only engineering and didn't meet a client ever, I'd be building the wrong stuff. Or products, if I took only product management and didn't meet a client ever. If I met only client and didn't know enough about what products could do or engineering could do, I'd be promising the wrong stuff there. So, which is not even buildable. I might just say we'll build a bridge with leaves or whatever, right? So it won't work. So you do need exposure and all. We had applied that in our company. We had a policy where people could free float. So our graphics designer, who she joined us as graphics designer, she became head of sales in Africa, and then she's gone on to be an entrepreneur by herself just now, some time ago, and very successful at that. So there was mobility in roles, and I think that helps. So even as co-founders, when your founders work together, it has to be delineated, because you just need to know who takes the last call on something, but you do need to be involved in everything.
So how do you do that without losing concentration on your primary function?
Your primary function is never a standalone function anyway. Your primary function is always anyway a function of quite a few things around it. So in fact, if you didn't know stuff around it and concentrated only on yours, you'd be down a path which is fraught with failure. You should know all the others. That's when you can concentrate on this. If you knew constraints, that's when you know what you want to build. So then you can focus and build better. That's my view.
So again, be a specialist but with generalist knowledge is
Yes, in a way.
And anyways, when you say that 70% of your energy should be towards your primary goal, and then 30% of your time and focus should be on what your founder, you're receiving the same thing. So
Exactly.
it does complement it.
And it does, and your I'd say 50-50, but your co-founders are depending on you, so you should do 70, and then probably another 70 on the other side. But I'll get beaten up like all these 90-hour folks and all that.
So what is your opinion on that? On like the 90-hour work week, 70-hour work week?
From a founder's perspective and also an employee's perspective, because I feel it's different.
I do think 90 hours is an overkill. I do think that quite a few ideas that we've got when we had stopped working, and we got ideas from something else, and then we correlated and used those ideas in our products. So it's important to take those breaks, but I won't, especially if you're a startup founder, I won't fool you into thinking 40 hours is all you'll work in a week. And I won't fool you into thinking that 90 is the best. The answer lies somewhere closer to in the 50-60 range, but you'll make that up for yourself depending on what you're doing. But in my experience, I knew that I used to do about 10-12 hours a day for about 6 days in the beginning, 10 hours for 6 days in the beginning. And then as it became, we grew, we matured, we did 50, and then we started doing 45. As we grew up to our own level of incompetence, so to speak.
So as someone who quantifies a lot, again, you mentioned that you used to work 10 to 12 hours in the beginning, and I'm sure a lot of people who founded companies to do that too. But again, in that 10 to 12 hours, maybe like 60% is actual work, another 40% is just something that's not actually contributing or like pushing the company forward.
No, but everything contributes, I don't know whether you count the time in your shower.
Okay.
When you think in your shower, you won't switch off your mind. You're still in the shower and you're still thinking of that problem and how to solve that. So is that counted as work hour or your shower hour? I don't know. So actually you're thinking of it other than the 8 hours that you're sleeping, of which 2 hours you're dreaming of this only. you're actually always at work. You may not be in office, you may not be in front of your laptop, but the reality is your mind is always working at how to make it successful and solving some problem. Oh, I need to hire 2 people, but I don't have the money. What will I do? You will apply your mind to it. But I do suggest that you take a break from it, because when you take a break and think of something else, you'll get an answer to that bit from somewhere else. Your mind makes those mental connections in some manner.
So,
So,
what does it
go on.
So what drove you? I mean, what's your primary driving factor that's helped you, that's pushed you to do so much again?
I'll tell you what my question was.
What?
What makes you so obsessed?
Dude, because
No, I-
Because this
yeah,
point, this
that
shower thing.
mentioned, yeah, that's only
But
someone
everyone
who
would
enjoys it.
speak to anyone. It's not me. So I love it to be all about me, but it's not. Speak to any founder, and every founder will say in their shower they're thinking of their business. They are.
Yes, 100%.
That's just simple. I mean, it's not me. You will only do that business if you're that obsessed. If you're not that obsessed, don't do it, because it will need that much. And if you don't like it, then boy, God help you, you're doing stuff you don't like, and for 16 hours a day.
So, if I were to compare a writer and a founder, how a writer gets creative block and how they overcome it. How does a founder get that, and how does he overcome it? Or at least, how did you overcome
Oh, that's amazing. What a great question. I had it. One of my co-founders had it. All of us had it. But that's when how you find your co-founders is very important. They hold when you fall. You hold when they fall, and they hold the space for you. And my co-founders right through have done that. Even in the venture that didn't work out, my co-founders wonderful at it. Probably that was a time when I was in a dip, so I would blame that failure on myself. But there are times when you dip, and you just need to then obviously not do the 90 hours and the 40 hours. But the point is your co-founders. So from the business point of view, you're doing right for the business. For yourself, you're going through a block and you'll come out of it. But a change in role usually always helps.
So are you someone who enjoys the journey more or the destination?
Journey.
Can you share us like maybe just one instance that, I mean, out of all three ventures of yours, like what has been like your one defining instance? Like before you pass away, if your life could like flash in front of your eyes, what's that one thing from that journey that's gonna like flash before your eyes?
Oh, actually, there's no one thing. That's the
Okay.
thing. I mean, almost every day was. I'd love to recount every day, and there are people in my company who come to me sometimes and recount. You remember that day we did this, and I'd say, "Wow, we did that," and they say, "Yeah," and then you said this to the client, and we went away. And so most often it will be a lot of fun stuff. So if I look back at all of this, I take away the fun with me, to the next world wherever I go, because that was just amazing. I mean, for all of you, all the students, your co-found, your your audience, make sure that you have fun while you're doing this.
So
It's
one
very important.
follow up to that was doing the work. I mean, was like the mission fun doing the work, or was it the people you worked with?
I must say it's. I'm a softie at that, so 60 or 70% was the people that I worked with, but yes, 30 hard nosed businessmen will say it's the other way around, but only 30 or 40% was the actual accomplishments, but the 60 or 70% was people.
So, and I think the last question that we'll ask you before the podcast concludes is, over the course of this time, you've acquired so much knowledge. Like, forget about the resource in the network. Just the knowledge that you've acquired has been tremendous. If you were to become 21 again and you were going to start a business, what's 5 pieces of wisdom?
Oh, 5.
Five, okay, three.
Oh, Baba. Huh.
What's 3 pieces of wisdom that you have that you would have engraved on your wall that you want not just you but your entire team to see before they step into the office each day?
Oh, before they step into the
Like, I
office
mean,
each day.
yeah, like,
The first would be, of course, make sure whoever is paying your client, and in some cases, the client is not apparent. Like in Google search, who's your client, right? If I was the guy who wrote Google search, then the people who are searching, are they my clients? The people who are paying for the ads, my clients. Obviously, I'll think of who is my real client, and maybe there are two. But and in a B2B, it's quite clear who your client is. But I think the first thing I'd say is make sure your customer is says wow. Your client/customer says, wow, don't leave until then, because it always pays off. Our first order which we got, it was supposed to be for 1 year. We got money only for 1 year. We took 3 years to perfect it. We, of course, kept delivering, and we didn't charge the client. And we thought we'd made a loss. But that client was the foundation for our whole journey. So it was important to make sure the clients say yes, and karma is karma. It'll come back to you. So that would be the first. Second would certainly be encourage innovation. And there will be failures. Don't come down on failures like as if they're a no. They're a part of the journey. And the third would be definitely have fun while you're doing whatever you're doing. Otherwise, don't do it. Just stop it.
I think that's been a great conclusion to the podcast, because not only for business, for a lot of things, we can always apply that in our life. I think if I ever had to get a life masterclass, this is the one.
100%.
If my kid ever says, I'm going to drop math, I'm going to make him sit and listen to this.
You know, funny thing again, the book that I mentioned earlier, The Innovation and Wonder, the Jeff Bezos one, there was something like this in that. And your answer, the reason I wrote it down, is almost the same as what he'd given.
I have to read this book. Please just
I'll
WhatsApp
share
it
it
to me. Seriously, I haven't read it.
It's been absolutely great having you on the
Thank you so much.
Thank you
It's an
so
honor
much, sir,
and a
for
pleasure.
coming.
Thank you.